So the PAC 750 was, I guess it was my brainwave to start the thing off. We always had produced the Cresco in the company, and prior to that, the CD4, of which May McGregor talked about it the other day at that last meeting. The Cresco aircraft has proven to be probably the most efficient aircraft for the type of fertiliser applications we do here in New Zealand and in parts of Australia. It wasn't a particularly good sprayer, was it? And so the problem with that was that the aircraft became driven by farmers' financial health. So if there was no fertiliser going on, we didn't have any sales. So we wanted an aeroplane that we could sell 7 days a week. So we always talked about Cresco extra large, and that always got shortened down to XL. So that's how the name came. So I always was fascinated with how people name aircraft, and you know, a Cessna 172 tells you exactly what it is, and everyone in the world knows what Cessna 172 is. So we thought, we'll just use the horsepower as the nomenclature for this aircraft. So it's a PAC 750 XL. And if you want to go in and look at the aircraft on the internet, just write in P750. Poof, it'll come up. That's all you have to do. So, and that's what it's known in the IATA area arena as a P750 as well. So, you know, that's where the nomenclature came from. So the aircraft, we had to decide how we were going to certify it. Now, New Zealand at that particular time when we started that program off had adopted the US FARs as their template for the rules in New Zealand. And I mean, there's good and bad in that. However, what civil aviation has done is taken those rules and put their own footprint on it. And I think that was the saddest thing that ever happened over it, but never mind. We went to the FAA and said, this is what we want to do. Will you please do the certification for us? And they said they would, but because New Zealand had adopted the FARs, they would look through New Zealand Civil Aviation at what we were doing. Now they had an ulterior motive as well. Throughout the world, there are a huge number of approved FAR workshops. None of them ever get audited. So what they wanted to do was say, Mr. New Zealand CAA, we want you to go and audit Air New Zealand's FAA certifications. That's where they were coming from. So we got licked up in the draft on all that, and it was good. The other thing which we were keen to promote was New Zealand's only certified about 4 aircraft in its history. So we relied on the people of CAA in yesteryear to interpret the rules. Not a good idea. The Yanks have done, I don't know how many thousand aeroplanes over the years. So you go to them and say, what happens here? And they say, well, this means you do this. Easy. So that's why we wanted the FAA involved. So they drove the bus and CAA were on it. So what we used as a basis for an aeroplane was the Cresco aircraft, which is certified at 6,450 pounds. Is that right? 6,450 pounds. And the gross overload allowed by civil aviation was 29%, which took it to 8,200 pound takeoff weights in restricted category. So So he said, well, you know, here's an airplane carrying more than what we want to certify this one for. We'll just put a bigger fuse on it. Good thinking. The fin and rudder needed some additional help because it wasn't going to drive that big a bus. So in order to get what size fuse we need, we decided to, at Aeronautical, which was another company which I owned, we had a King Air in there, King Air B200, and they used quite a lot in the States for parachuting. So it was all stripped out, so we went over and got in the airplane, and three of us, not as broad in the backside as me, but three of us sat on the spar, and we got the ruler out, and that was the width of the airplane. That's what the width of that is. And the length of it was determined by the same airplane measuring from the firewall to the rear luggage locker. So that's how we got the size. So having done all that scientifically, we decided that, you know, the back of the fag packet thing, these are the sorts of things we need to do. Under FAR Part 23, you're allowed to have 10 people in the aircraft. That's the maximum loading. So 10 people, we added a number, thought of a number for each of those 10, baggage, and the airplane came out at 7,500 pounds certified weight. So that's how we figured out what the weight was going to be. We knew the base weight of the airplane, where it should be, and we're looking at around 3,200 pounds. So it gave us a good amount of baggage space in there. Oh, there we go. So the main features was to continue to adopt the Cresco features, but just make it a whole lot simpler in some of the maintenance, because I'm from a maintenance background as well, and so was the guy who was the general manager of Pacific Aerospace for us, Graham Polly. And we've had enough of, you know, doing an engine change, like changing mags on an airplane like at Mooney or something like that, which, you know, you need to dismantle the whole aircraft in order to get a mag off it. So we tried to make it as simple as we possibly could. So all the decisions were now made. We needed to obviously talk to the bank man, and they were all pretty good about it. But the main thing with the certification was to get CAA on board so that when we did a test, they were available to witness that test. If you ring them up today and say, we want you to come and look at an airplane here now, they want 30 days notice in writing, and, you know, there's just so many, it just made it impossible. At that time, John Jones was the Director of Civil Aviation. Do you remember, you guys remember John Jones? Yeah, he was Mount Cook. And John said, we'll do it. One of his main offsiders was a guy called Jeremy Ramacha, and he was the #1 driver for us. Let's try another one of these. They're a bit difficult to read from there, but that we made out all the stations and got quite tricky about how it should all be. So these are the areas which we thought would fit into it. Now, I only just added this one in a couple of days ago, but when the aircraft was originally being thought of and what we were going to use it for, ag work was not included. It's turned out to be the most magnificent ag aircraft we produce. Here we go. So this is the test certification program. This is the flap. I've got another slide in here somewhere. Obviously they're not in any, well, they are in any particular order. So this is the flap being tested. There's 4,200 pounds on that, and the flap needed to be of sufficient strength where you could deploy it at 160 knots. That's a big flap. It's a big piece of kit. And it's very strong. So that was 4,200 pounds on top of that for that test. The nose leg, this is the nose leg here. So we've got 2,000 pounds in here and we've dropped it on this platform which is shaped like so. You can actually see the bend in the thing. It's not a distortion of the photo, but you can actually see it bent, and you can see the tyre crushed there with the amount of weight on it. And that tyre was inflated to a standard tyre pressure for normal operations. So all you pilots, when you do a heavy landing, that's what it looks like. So this is the main leg here. We had 2,000 pounds in the box and dropped 2,500 pounds in the box and dropped that wheel, and you can see how that's even distorted a little bit, but the tyre is a bit stressed. Now the tail feathers, this is the Cresco here, and you see it's the Cresco fin is made of a little thin bits of material going across there, and it's a fluted skin for the rudder. We actually made these skins here, but originally when the first Fletcher came out, they were cut off from the end of the wing skin, and there was a piece left over, so they used them all on here. So we had to continue to do this while we built the Cresco. But the aeroplane started life on the 750 on the far slide. It started with this slot here. So we knew that the area of the fin and rudder was too small. This is a flap. The flap gave us a real heartache, and we spent hours trying to get the airplane slow enough, because there is a number that the aircraft must be at in order for the flap to deploy and the airplane slow down. And we just had a hell of a job doing that. So in the end, this was the correct one, but this had to be changed. And this is a standard Cresco up under the wing, and then we had to flare it like that, and then had to tighten it right up so it's almost a Fowler system. And that whole project probably took several weeks for us to get. We actually built some. Here's some of the ones that we built. Now you'd have thought this is like a bloody barn gate here, and when it was deployed, the aircraft went faster. Why? And it was just we just couldn't win the game until finally two things had happened. We closed up all the tolerances up in here, so it became more aerodynamic. We put a leading edge fillet in here, so we had a slightly bigger wing area, but the airflow over it was even, and that was the aerodynamics that sorted it out in the end. Plus we went, instead of, this is the Cresco one here, it's got fluted skins on it, and on this one here we took all the flutes out. Two reasons. One is that's far easier to build, and then the second one, putting those flutes in, you had to anneal the skin and then form it and then heat treat it back to the original strength. So it was quite an expensive exercise. We did get to use certain materials which work hardened as you made those flutes, but that was later on. The elevator and tailplane, same deal. That had to be tightened up. So this is the elevator and tailplane off the Cresco, which we thought would fit straight onto there. We put gull wing doors on the thing. So when we'd finished messing around with building the aircraft and then started into the test program, we found not one single part of the Cresco could be used on the 750XL. It was an all new ball game, the whole lot. You could use the elevator off the XL on the Cresco, but not the other way around. So, you know, the certification program went from a 10 bob job to a $10 million job. Now the testing of the fuselage, we actually had all that equipment locked in a hangar so nobody could actually see us doing the tests. Not because we didn't want them to see, but if they saw what went on, you'd be bloody terrified to get into an airplane. So we set the fuse in that configuration like that, with an engine mount on here, no engine and no cowls, but and so the fuse is sitting in there just on so 3 arses wide. And what we did was put a big RSJ on the engine mount, bolted it on, and then got chain blocks and pulled it over so it was at 90 degrees to the plane of the aircraft. So that was fixed to the ground. Then on the back end, another one going the other way. And we had to release those so that they would come back and not collapse. They could be distorted, but not collapse. And then you turn the fuse over and bend it down, holding it in the middle, and push it down. So it was like a banana. So, you know, it's a torturous thing, and it would frighten people who didn't understand it. This exercise didn't take 5 minutes, I can assure you. We just used a roller door to for a couple of reasons. It was easy to get, because it's an extra large door, that one, and in the parachute roll we could stand 9 people in that doorway, but and it was easy to roll the thing back and load it up, because the configurations for the test is really, really difficult. So one of the first things we bought was a laser sheet metal cutter, and that was a real clever piece of kit for us, because accompanying that we also bought a machine which checked the size of your you know, you could put that item on the platform of the machine, and it had an elevated eye up here which looked down like a bird, looked down on that and tell you the shape and size and all the rest of it. So we thought, well, if you can check what you've done, why can't we do it the other way around? And between that machine and that one there was the best things we ever bought, because we'd take, when we were skinning the airplane, the guys would go out there and they'd get a piece of tin and bend it around whatever the thing we were doing, and drill a hole in the bottom and in the top. Take it over to the latest sheet metal cutter, have that thing look at it, then you could tell it to, we want to drill a whole lot of line of holes here, what pitch, what size, and where else we want them, then take them back and put them on the thing. And if one hole was out, it was easier to throw that skin away and put another piece of tin under there. It just cut thousands of hours out of the deal. And most of the guys that were working on it, we already knew so much about what we'd done with the Cresco that we could do a whole lot of things and get away with it. And all that information then would go back into the drawing office, data-wise, and they would get their pocket calculators out and see whether or not, you know, it could take the loadings that were needed. Yeah, this might be a challenge. I'm not sure how that works. This is the first flight. I don't know whether I can actually play it. Oh, here we go. So is it John McWilliams, our pilot here, and to get him approved as a test pilot was a mission in itself. But this is the actual first flight. Now you'll note on this one here, we didn't know what size fin and rudder we'd need, so this has still got the old fin and rudder on. I know it looks impressive, but he's empty. The aircraft weighs about 3,100 pounds in that configuration there, plus pilot and fuel. So one of the interesting things is the fuel system. Because the centre wing section of that, which is 29 feet, is dead flat, it's how do you move that fuel around? Because you could get it all on one side and all on the other. So in fact what we do is pressurise the tank, and we pressurise it by putting a bigger pump on the engine to pump the fuel, and it can't eat the fuel that it's pumped, so it goes back into the tanks through a series of venturis. We put a whole series of venturis, so it sucked it into the front tank, which went into the sump and back into the engine. So there's no parts to wear out because it's all on venturi. So it's a real simple system, but it took a bit of coming up with. So here's some of the static tests. Now the configurations for, this is the flight testing programs that we had to do. The configurations that we need to comply with, there are 369 elements in the FARs that you have to pass to get tick in the box. And you start at number 1 and go to 369. If you go to 368 and it fails, go back to number 1 and start again. So we got into a bit of a muddle with how much we could spin the aircraft, because there are 2 methods of certification for an aircraft. It either is spin resistant or it has to be spun. Now, no one that I know of in the world has ever produced an airplane that you can't spin. Some pilot will find a way to spin it. So you have to go the other route, which is actually shorter. And the aircraft was indicating a tendency towards flat spinning. So we grounded it and we solicited the assistance of the National Test Pilot School in Mojave. And the guy that ran the place was a little Irishman. And he always said he's a 66th percentile man because, you know, he was only a little guy. And his wife, who was a Canadian, one was orange and the other was green. And that's the way it worked. But she was also a test pilot, and the number 1 guy that came with them was another fellow called Greg Lewis. Now they do the test piloting for the test pilots to qualify for the US military. So, you know, they're right up there. But this guy came in and we said, we're having trouble with this aeroplane and spinning. What can we do? And he got on the aeroplane, flew it around for half an hour, came back and he said, the front's too close to the back. You need to stretch it out. I'm thinking, geez, we've done all this structural testing and he wants us to shove an extra piece in the middle there somewhere. And I'm thinking, wow, you know, this is another couple of 3 years down the track. Anyway, Murray McGregor, who was here the other day, he came up with the idea that we'll add it to the back end of the airplane. So he nailed on 18 inches to the back of the airplane. And that had some real upside because it gave us a very good, stable area to attach the elevator and tailplane. At the same time, Sean said, you need a bigger fin and rudder. How big, Sean? Oh, shit, he said, I don't know. He said, why don't we make it 40% bigger? So that's what we did. I said, isn't there a black book you go into and say, you know? He said, there is, but he said, sometimes I get it wrong. So his qualifications in this world were quite interesting. He won a Fulbright scholarship as an aerodynamicist. And the three people that came to help us, this is their resumes, and it's real interesting to see how good they were. His wife was a mathematician as well, so all these guys with the pocket calculators and all that, you know, just those guys just were so good. Oh, here's another one we can try. So this is after we'd pretty tidy spin, isn't it? Oh, we need to go now. Oh, yeah. So there were a lot of challenges in this whole program. You know, we're not into, once we've done all these preliminary tests, once we're comfortable that we were going to get over the line, we could start the actual tests. So we asked Sean if his team would do the actual tests for us as well, which was probably the smartest thing to do. And as I say, you know, you started at number 1 and went to number 389. But what he knew in previous testing regimes is that you start at 1, but you could probably tick off 250, 270, 321 wolf, and that's what in fact it did. And some of those test things are right here, and I'll just you can have a quick shift here. There's a couple of tests here that they did. Now, it's probably we were a danger to the forestation of New Zealand with the amount of paper we generated from all these tests. This is one report, one flight. So every single flight was recorded. There was no one got into that aeroplane without a full set of documents of what they were going to do, and when it came back, they had to write a report on it. So this is actually the actual spinning test, or the test for the certification program. So the guys who did our test flying were geniuses at producing lots and lots of reports. Now we had on every single flight 2 cameras with voiceovers, one which looked, you saw the one on the spinning, looked at the instrumentation, and the other one looked at the instrumentation and the horizons. All had voiceovers, which you saw there. And then as we wanted to look further around the aircraft, we put more cameras in. So all those are held for life of type. So they're all parked up in PHC right now. So, yeah, it's not a game for sissies, I can assure you. So here's one, a 40-page report required to fly with the door open. So this is what you did before you went flying. And then after you've completed the thing, what you did with it. So this is the first outing, was at Ardmore Air Show in 2003. We got a special flight permit to take it up there for the day to sit on the ground, because we didn't have any certifications. Now, the certification flight testing was completed on the 28th of March 2003, an interesting date. It's exactly 100 years since the alleged Richard Pearce flew his airplane. So, whether he did or not, who knows? We'll never know. So in the 18 months, of static testing, 100 static tests, 315 flights, 1,000 spins, 2,500, 70,000 man hours, and $8 million we spent in developing the aircraft of that stage. That didn't include the actual cost of the aircraft, because that was another $1 million there. The average aircraft as a Part 23 certification process in the USA is $100 million and takes the average of 13 years to get it through. So we did it in less than 3. So that's from where to go there. And there's a piece of paper. And I have one of those, and I have the FAA one. The FAA one was issued later, and it was because a local man here died in the delivery of the aircraft, Cal Stark. And whilst we had sold the airplane, the purchaser contracted Cal to fly it, and unfortunately lost his life doing it. And it was due to fuel management, and It was a sad day. Anyone got any questions?
Well, you know when you said you get the fuselage and you bend it this way and then you're bending it, you're not then discarding that fuselage.
That's the fuselage.
So how do they make sure that when you're pre-testing something and you're stressing it up to that point that
We put it back in the jig.
you put it back in the jig to make sure it's not distorted?
Yeah,
But you
to make sure it's not distorted.
Right.
So we have to unpick some of the skins and replace those. But the main reason for that is because we've got such a large door and we've got an extremely large CFG on that aeroplane, that we wanted to make sure that, you know, you open the door and flight it actually is going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Brian, the gull wing doors,
yep.
are they able to be taken off in a hurry, or is it a crash?
Yes, they are. And in fact, one of the requirements for John McWilliam to fly the airplane, I made him buy a fireproof suit, you know, like the racing car guys have, and a full facial, the whole deal. Put a parachute on and demonstrate how you could get out of it. So, you know, you don't want to do that in the air, you know, you had to do it on the ground. So we just ran the engine at full power and he had to open those doors, but you can't pull a pin and just take the whole door off.
Right.
Yeah. And that, I think, was the demise of Cal, was the Coast Guard that boxed him before he put it in the water rang me at night. This is Christmas night, and said, "How do we put this airplane in the water?" And I said, "I have no idea. You know, it's not something we'd even contemplated." And they said, "Oh well, the doors. Can we open the doors?" And I said, "Well, Cal's a big man. If you open his door, I reckon he'd crack his head on the doorpost." And but you know, it's not my call. You know, they're the experts, not me. And they opened both doors, and I think Cal was knocked out and drowned. I think that's what happened. Because they jumped out of the hurt and got down in the sea with him.
Yeah, we've got quite a good display in the hangar about that whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you go about, what's an outline of the process to protect the patent in this? I mean, incredible.
The type certificate protects it. That piece of paper that's coming around there, that type certificate, that's the only piece of paper that protects it.
So how can you stop prying eyes from another country looking?
Well, I'd actually be, if someone wanted to steal my secrets, I'd think there's got to be a buck in here somewhere. No, I guess, you know, there's nothing that's that controversial in there. It's interesting to note, though, we did a lot of bending of material, you know, aluminium or aluminum, whatever you like to call it. And we had a heat treatment plant for doing it, or we'd cook the material and to anneal it, hold it in freezers, and then when the guys got to it and bend it into the shapes they want, you know, we'd reheat treat it to its original temper. And it's interesting because Boeing came out and had a look at what we were doing, because we built a lot of stuff for Boeing. We're on every 747 in the world, and we're on the 737s, the Airbus 320, 330 and 340, and the FA-18, all the flaps were built by POC, built by us in Hamilton, and we built the US Marine hovercraft that carried 6 tanks. They used to fly it up the back end of a boat, big piece of kit, big piece of kit. And Boeing came out to have a look at what we were doing, and you know, I think they just have auditors that go around the world, And there was always some auditor from somewhere looking at what we were doing. And they saw our plant there that did all this treatment to the aluminium. And they said, can we copy that for you, from you guys? Fill your boots. And they adopted the system we use and took it back to Boeing, back to Seattle.
For a price.
No, it wasn't that tricky. They just hadn't thought it through. Yeah.
So Brian, that is the paper to go ahead and build.
Yep. That allows you to go and build the aeroplane. Yeah. However, there's a whole lot of other stuff goes on after that. We built the aircraft in the most economical configuration that we could, and that was for parachuting. And that's why it was used initially in parachuting, because the seats had to be 18G seats. I can tell you what it costs to do that today, because for an airplane set, you can buy 9 passenger seats for $75,000 a piece. A piece. So we weren't in that game, and we had to rely on someone else to do it. The pilot seats that were in it, we used the Gippsland one, who had gone through it, and they sold the pilot seats to us. So we tried to make it as simple as possible, so there's no seats in the back of the bus, so to speak.
So with the 750, there's no connection between the pilot and the passengers. It's sort of.
No, it's all open.
Is it, it's open?
Yep, fully
Was
open.
it the
Yep.
Cresco the other way around?
The one
Yeah.
I saw while they had the hopper in.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting in the agricultural configuration. So we're now at 7,500 pounds. If you add 30% to that, it comes out at 9,000 something, 200 and something. So we filled the hopper up with 3 ton in the hopper, and the thing went off like a homesick angel. And we had to do a dump test to make sure it all came out. We did it on the end of the airfield. It burnt a whole lot of grass, I can assure you. There's a big heap of dirt there. I went to New Guinea on a particular, bit of a sales tour, and we needed to go up to one or two of the more tricky airstrips to demonstrate the ability of the aircraft to handle rough strips and all that sort of thing. And I said to them, well, if we're going up there, we might as well fill it up with something. What do you want to take? And they had a whole heap of stuff. So I measured it all in carefully, and we took off. We were about, I think we're probably just over 8,000 pounds. And went up to this strip and landed and took everything out. And then we bought a load of coffee back, in the bags and everything. Filled the thing up, brought it back. So I said, well, should we do it again? There's still more coffee. And one of the local guys said, he said, I'll load the airplane, you don't worry about it, go and have a cup of coffee or whatever you want to do. So that's a bloody good deal. So he loaded the airplane up. Well, Guy Stevenson, Andy's son, was driving the airplane. And we're at Goroka. And Goroka's about 5,000 feet, I think, isn't it? And it's quite it's an easy strip, I suppose, but it slopes away, and if you go far enough, you'll end up in Ley. Well, we nearly ended up in Ley, and we couldn't get out of ground effect. I'm thinking, geez, we got all this stuff aboard. Obviously, we're grossly overloaded, and we're at the front of the bus, so it's all going to come meet us somewhere along the line if we have a sudden stop. Anyway, Guy teased the thing up, and we finally got up to where we could fly the thing. And we thought, well, it's flying, we might as well go and deliver it. So we went and delivered all this. And I weighed it all off. We were at 11,000 pounds. So after that, I weighed everything.
That's another bit of test flying.
Pardon me?
That was another bit of test
Oh, yeah.
So Brian, do you build them to order or you build them and then sell?
Well, at that stage, we're trying to do it as a production line program, but it was hard to get above one a month. Just the inertia, you're going up 100%, the inertia to get it up. And we required, a pretty solid investment to get all that up, and having invested a fair amount of money and time and everything else in the exercise, I thought, whoa, I need to get out. So I sold out of there in 2006.
We, as a society, we did a trip to your place.
Yeah,
And I was intrigued in the fabrication where the guy's showing us a piece of something that's been printed, and if the tag's gone, throw it away.
yeah,
You've got to get that.
Yeah.
And barcodes as well, I think.
yeah,
Everything was just had
Yeah.
to be,
yeah. There's no shortcut. Take a shortcut, something will bite you.